So I just had to wait through both extreme winds and then somebody running a chainsaw outside to film this video. So here we are, welcome to Writing Wednesday. I have a pretty elaborate makeup look planned for today, so I am just going to be talking about anything and everything. I will try my best to organize whatever topics I happen to touch on in the chapters. So if you look at kind of like the runtime of the video, you'll see the different stuff I talk about organized vaguely into different categories. And now someone is shoveling outside. I can't win. Okay, I waited a little bit. I still hear the shoveling occasionally. I also sometimes still hear the chainsaw. But whatever, let's just get on with it. I took the time to put some dry shampoo in my front parts here. So, at least I got something done in the meantime. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is Fate the Winx Saga, the Netflix adaptation of Winx Club. Comes out either the day after I'm posting this or the next day. And we now know a little bit more about the show through various teaser clips and interviews with cast and crew. One thing that was speculated at the time but not confirmed when I made my first Winx Club video was that Tara, played by Elliot Salt, would not be a complete one-for-one replacement of Flora, but would be a Flora-adjacent character with Flora separately existing somewhere else in this new Winx world.
It's a family thing. I've got this cousin called Flora.
And I actually kind of like that idea. I don't like the idea that they replaced a white person with a role that was originally Latina, but I like the idea of them kind of reintroducing the concept of like the Winx being in different grades, or the Winx being different ages relatively to each other, and then also to the tricks. Because a concept that was in the early seasons of Winx but got dropped in the later seasons was that the Winx Club members were all freshman fairies, with maybe the exception of Stella, who's kind of like a super senior who keeps failing.
Long time no see, Miss G.
Not long enough, Princess Stella. Not after the little incident last year. I don't know how your parents convinced the school board to take you back. It's beyond me.
They did donate that new computer lab.
While in contrast, the tricks, the witches who are the main villains of the series, started out as senior witches. So it's like kind of more of a big deal when the Winx end up defeating the tricks, and that their power upgrades in the earlier seasons not only represented a moment of personal growth for them personally, but also represented them going up a grade, with Charmix being kind of a moment of personal triumph, but also no longer being freshman fairies, and Enchantix sort of being their senior project, with earning their Enchantix kind of representing their movement out of being student fairies into being guardian fairies of their respective planets. So I like the idea of the Netflix show giving the Winx a bigger sense of progression. Not even just Winx Club, but a lot of fantasy shows in general kind of have this issue of wanting to convince the audience that their characters are constantly getting stronger, they're constantly training, but never defining their power growth in any specific way. Obviously, this can be done in more ways than just introducing a new power or a title, and this is going to be heavily determined by the kind of magic system the showrunners want. Whereas in the original cartoon, Winx Club had a very hard magic system in that the levels of power were made very clear by the different transformations. So you had the base level, your base Winx, the first upgrade, which is Charmix, and then Enchantix, so on and so forth for several more seasons. And every new transformation signified an increase in power level. But the new show might choose not to do that, and this is where I get into the next section where I want to talk about the showrunner of Fate the Winx Saga and what he lists as some of his influences. Now, the showrunner's name is Brian Young, and Brian Young is most known for being a producer on a show called The Vampire Diaries. And while I've never watched The Vampire Diaries very in-depth growing up, I do know, thanks to Jenny Nicholson's recent 2-hour deep dive video into The Vampire Diaries, that The Vampire Diaries TV show did not follow their source material at all. And from what it sounds like in the interview with Brian Young, that he wants to emulate the grounded teen supernatural drama of The Vampire Diaries.
I used to work on a show called The Vampire Diaries, and The Vampire Diaries did this great thing of being a vampire show that was really just a grounded teen show.
Now, I know Jenny Nicholson would probably be feeling some kind of way hearing The Vampire Diaries be called a grounded teen show, but I think this gives us a better idea of what to expect from Fate the Winx Saga. I don't think we should be expecting the show to be following the continuity of the cartoon if this show is going to be anything like The Vampire Diaries. The showrunners didn't specifically list these as influences, but the shows that come to mind are shows like Riverdale or even the recent Nancy Drew reboot, shows that adapt the very broad strokes of their source material but otherwise go in a completely different direction. Now, that still doesn't excuse the whitewashing of the show. I think the show, it can be fairly criticized on that level, even if they do plan to go in a completely different direction from the cartoon. But I will say, don't trash the actors for something like this. I might be biased here because I am also an actor, but actors in general get very little say in roles like these, and especially when you're not super duper famous, you don't exactly have a lot of say in the roles you're offered. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the cast had no idea that these roles were being switched out for white people. You know, people in the Winx Club fandom think of Winx as this, like, surprisingly long-running cartoon, but especially in the States where Winx Club is kind of bounced between networks and there's been different translations, so it's very easy, like, to look over a cartoon like this. Actually, no, most of the main cast are from the UK or Europe, so I have no idea what the airing of Winx Club looked like in those areas. So yeah, that's all I have to say before Fate the Winx Saga airs in a few days. I'm excited. You know, even if I don't like it, it's not gonna tarnish my enjoyment of the original cartoon, you know? And of course, I do live stream every Friday, and by that Friday, the show will be out. I probably won't have watched all of it by the time I live stream on Friday, but I will try to watch as much of it as I can before the Friday live stream, so if you want to talk about it, check me out on the newest live stream. But yeah, man, maybe I should have talked about the fun thing first, because the other thing I wanted to talk about was, as of the day I'm recording this, I filmed this on Tuesday and posted on Wednesday, so as of tomorrow, the day I'm filming this, we will have a new president in the United States. And I'm planning on watching the inauguration tomorrow, probably before I post my video, because at least for the West Coast, it's gonna be fairly early in the morning. Actually, funny enough, a similar thing happened the day of the insurrection. It was on a Wednesday. I was going to go post my video, and as I'm posting my video, my dad comes into my room and is like, did you know they just stormed the Capitol? I was like, what? You know, it happened around 2 p.m. Eastern time, which is 11 a.m. Western time, and especially because I'm on break from my internship right now, I tend to sleep in more often than not, so it was weird, like, waking up and, like, first thing being like, I gotta get my video out, and then this happens. It really puts everything in perspective. Suddenly, getting up a video on time doesn't really seem all that important. And, like, this is gonna sound horrible, but I now understand how my parents felt during, like, 9/11, because I was just glued to, not my TV, but, like, you know, my phone, the internet, looking at news. It's just so interesting, like, something like this was just so openly filmed from, there's just so many different angles and cameras just pointed everywhere, and the commentary, just an overwhelming mass of commentary from everyone everywhere with lots of different opinions, which is what makes it interesting for me, at least. And that brings me back to the inauguration. You know, I'm not the biggest fan of Joe Biden. His policies are very hit and miss for me, and I'm just a little bit more to the left of him. It's funny to see sort of like right-wing commentators calling him this extremist, liberal, communist, and then switch to the BBC and have all of these reporters in these very posh accents call him centrist Joe Biden. He is a corporate centrist, and the corporate part of his policy is kind of a lot of the stuff I don't like. I've been watching a lot of this beauty-adjacent commentary channel called As Told by Kenya, and in her latest video, Why I Want People to Struggle So Bad, she talks about the mentality in America of blaming poor people for being poor, and that it is the responsibility of the working class and not the government to sort of the old pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make something of yourself from nothing, which is really a misleading belief, especially when you consider how generational wealth can be. And so even before Biden has entered office, there's been this whole rigmarole around him promising $2,000 checks, but is now walking that back to $1,400 checks on top of the $600 that everybody just recently got, instead of a plain and simple $2,000 check. Now this, compared to the rest of the developed world, is kind of embarrassing. Most of the developed world has been handing out their citizens checks every month, basically supplementing people's income even before unemployment, basically paying people to stay home. For example, I believe Canada will give assistance starting at $1,200 a month and up to $2,000 a month, and that's been since March. And this is what most other countries have been doing. Smaller European countries in particular have been taking out loans that they frankly cannot afford in order to continue to supplement people's income and supplement businesses that have had to remain closed. The US, by comparison, has done far less, when by comparison we have far more purchasing power than these other countries that have done way more. And I can hear right now all of the frat boy finance majors I took classes with and very much wanted to punch. I can hear them saying, but what about the stock market? Our economy is great because our stock market is great. The stock market has not been a great reflection of the overall economy since like the 70s. I don't know what it is, our problem in the United States of trying to push these super old and disproven theories about economics. Like the idea that if we bail out or give huge supplements to these massive corporations, that it will somehow magically help everybody else. The only exception I could actually think to that is in the 2008 financial crash when Obama bailed out like banks, because banks are kind of different in that they actually hold like everybody's money, and if they were to just disappear, like everybody's money would be gone. I mean, that's a very big generalization, but this goes back to the idea that one big company can only inject so much money into the economy at one time, versus even like 20 people. If you divide that money amongst 20 people, they all individually are going to buy groceries and whatever, and that's going to inject more money into the economy a lot faster. And entrusting a corporation to uplift working class people and the economy almost forces you to be ignorant of the actual goal of a corporation. I'm sure the people who run a corporation are very nice people, but never mind even the people who run a corporation. The goal of a corporation is to make money. And so when you give a corporation a lot of money, they're not going to automatically use it to increase wages or increase benefits. They're going to try to conserve as much money as possible. So unless, I don't know, you have some kind of government mandated legislation that forces these corporations to raise wages, it's very likely not going to happen on its own. Okay, I've been ranting for a while. I should probably talk about some writing on this Writing Wednesday. In the lead up to the release of Fate the Winx Saga, I've been mostly working on my Winx Club fanfiction, mostly making some edits to some more recent chapters that I've written that I haven't released yet, because, you know, when you've written something since high school and you dropped it, I think I actually dropped it when I was still in high school and didn't pick it up for 4+ years, you sometimes forget that things are in a story. It's not until you do a more detailed reread, or in my case, taking a hard look at some of the master notes I have for the story, that you realize, I've written 3 chapters. I've totally forgotten there's a love triangle between like the 3 characters I've written in these recent chapters. So luckily, I had a chance to go back and edit them. Thankfully, these chapters have not been released yet. It's not like a case of me going into chapters that have already been published and people have already read and fixing those, hoping that they'll maybe go back and read them again. this gloss smells like lip smackers and I am here for it. So yeah, I've sort of spoiled that like love triangularliness will be abound in these next few chapters of my Winx Club fan fiction. The new chapter comes out this Friday, and other than that, that's it for my Writing Wednesday. Let me know your thoughts on any of the random stuff I talked about today. If you've made it this far, thank you for letting me basically just indulge myself all of these Wednesdays and just talking about whatever I want, really. And until then, I will see you next time.